What's the stupidest reason you got in trouble in school? In 7th grade English class, a classmate looked pretty sad, so I asked her how she was doing. No malicious intent, just wondering what was making her so upset, but she started sobbing. I apologized and moved on. Later that day, I get pulled from a different class by a math teacher that I've never met before, who yelled at me in the hallway making snide remarks about my parents and their parenting capacity. She made me sit in front of the principal's office to wait for the principal to talk to me for 4 hours, long after the school day has ended. When the principal finally did show up, he had no idea why I was sitting there. Middle school me was too shy to make a fuss about it, but in hindsight I should have made a complaint against her. To this day, the girl that I supposedly bullied has no idea why the math teacher flipped out at me. So you guys were both like WTF. For saying my school picture sucked. I had no idea sucked was considered a bad word until I was put in detention for it. For using my asthma medication in class. I was told to keep my inhaler in the office and to use it in there only. I was told it was distracting. Know what else is distracting? The sounds of someone gasping for air and having to be removed from class. What's worse is kids have died because they didn't have immediate access to their inhalers or EpiPens because they needed to be kept in the office. Idiotic. Someone made a paper airplane out of scrap paper that had been binned. My name was written on the sheet they used. I got sent out the room and handed a punishment exercise. Grad school, as in, full-grown adult. One of my patients was a chill guy. We had one of those relaxed relationships. He would fist bump me after treatment was completed. The Dean of Academic Affairs did not like that. Got a 45-minute lecture on doctor-patient relationship, and how dare I violate that trust with a fist bump. A big part of healing is believing in your healer. A fist bump from my doc would tell me we got this more than any 10-second bedside conversation the old school authoritative doctors sporting a god complex have given. Stick to the fist bump and smile. Someone once poked a wasp nest in the school forest, and the whole swarm came out upon the school. The entire school sat attention for an hour. Understandable if you don't know who did it, but that's not the problem. We were sitting detention because the principal's son got stung. As it eventually turned out, it was actually his fault the swarm came down on us. I have cursed his name since the day I found out. In 11th grade I had gotten pink eye in both eyes. I'd never had it before, just thought I was having a reaction to my eyeliner or whatever. I was in second period, cooking 101. My teacher kept looking at me funny the entire class. Eventually she asked to talk to me in the hallway. She told me that I needed to go to the nurse's office because I was stoned, and she could tell by how fascinated I was with the cooking we were doing. I was so confused and kept trying to tell her I was having some sort of allergic reaction, but she wasn't having it and yelled at me. Told me to grab my things and go now. Pretty much berated me while the whole class could hear and had me so frustrated, embarrassed I was in tears. Walked into the classroom, everyone was staring at me in silence. Grabbed my stuff and went to the nurse. One look at me and she confirmed the pink eye. Got to go home and stay home for a few days. I remember my teacher tried to apologize for the incident. Class was super awkward after that. Dang, she must think cooking is really boring. I checked out a book on African tribes from the library in the 4th grade. I told the teacher about how the book had topless women in it, thinking I was helping. She confiscated the book and had me suspended from school for hugging a crying classmate in the hall. And that one time I typed the word boobies on the calculator in math class. I got in trouble for cheating on one of my math exams. The teacher found a piece of paper in my pencil case. I got sent to the principal's office. When the principal asked me about what I wanted to say in my defense, I simply told him to take a look at the note. It turned out to be a shopping list. I was allowed to retake the exam the following week. My friend got in trouble for this when he was actually writing a list of weird events to happen in something he was into at the time. Can't quite remember what. The teacher demanded to see the note, then read a list containing items along the lines of Greg set fire to the hospital, and Greg proceeded to shoot Lindsay, and the ghost of Lindsay haunted the rest of the people on the island. In 1993 the Flaming Lips song She Don't Use Jelly came out. I was in 3rd grade and I really liked that song. and started signing it with my friends during a double-handed jump roping session. She don't use Geely or any of Theosophie. She uses Viasi line. Boom. Written up. 3-day suspension for saying sexually suggestive things. I had no idea that was meant sexually. Worse even, no one would explain why that song was sexually suggestive. It was very confusing. Back in high school, had a gym teacher that wished to be any teacher other than gym teacher. Come the driver's ed course. There's some bull's 3-page pamphlet she tells us to read through and summarize. I do just that. She decides my summary of a shortest pamphlet is too close to something she found online, so she makes a big huff about it and I literally have to march over to my English teacher with the summaries, have her evaluate them, and sign off on a form that no, she didn't classify my summary of a bull's short pamphlet being somewhat similar to any other summary of a bull's short. I tripped on a loose tile and bumped into a teacher, causing her to spill her coffee on herself. I apologized and showed her the tile. She went on for months about how I did it on purpose. Even got the principal and my folks involved. For the rest of the year she told me I couldn't come back to her class unless I apologized for doing it on purpose. Never went back to her class. Though I initially apologized for the incident, I never once apologized for doing it on purpose. Frick you, Ms. Helm. I honestly hate hearing these stories. I want to hear that someone stood up for the victims and said you are a person with authority over us and you should know better than to act high and mighty. I once got in trouble for reading Stephen King. They were like, you're reading dark books, it's the reason your behavior is bad. One of my teachers gave me a Stephen King novel since I enjoyed reading it. I apparently sighed loudly when a TA who knew she wasn't very popular walked in the room. I was talking to a friend the opposite side of my table. For fighting, the school butthole sucker punched me and I didn't retaliate. It was even caught on tape. The zero tolerance policy is one of the stupidest things ever. 100% agree. Almost got a suspension for doing nothing. Then my mom, absolute legend, threatened to call the police, claiming the school did nothing to ensure my safety after seeing all my bruises and scrapes from fights. I threw a closed pen to my friend who was like 3 feet away from me, and the teacher freaked out. He made a big deal out of it in front of the whole class for a solid 5 minutes, and then emailed my parents. Luckily my mom was able to see my side of things and she said, "Doesn't that teacher have better thing to do than email me about my child throwing pens? We still laugh about it from time to time." Bro, I feel you're right. Tried to wake my sleeping friend up by gently throwing a pen at his back cause he was cold. The teacher lectured me for about 1 stroke for the class time. First, I did many things to get in trouble legitimately. I went undiagnosed with ADHD inattentive type for a long time, because I would laser focus on schoolwork and get done quickly, then get bored and disrupt everyone else. The secretaries in my elementary school office knew me on sight when I went back to visit in high school, but there were a couple times that were questionable. Clapping. In 4th grade I learned you can clap louder by having the fingers on one hand go into the palm of the other. I was part of a mini concert for our extremely talented string students, or yeah, hot cross buns, and I was kicked out and sent to the office because I clapped along with everyone else. But a teacher felt I was being disruptive, abusing my newfound power. It was decades ago, so I really can't say if I was being a jerk or not. Sneezing. I sneezed several times, and like a duck quacking. I got it from my grandfather who did the same. If those things are hereditary, I can try to hold it in, but then it looks like I'm having a seizure. Our middle school science teacher immediately tried to give me ISS when I sneezed for the first time, and it took the whole class vouching for me before she relented. After that, people would just pause for me to finish, and I'd apologize. The stupidest reason someone tried to get me in trouble was for doing the assignment. There was a special needs kid in my programming class, and he had an assistant. She thought I was goofing off on the internet and asked me to stop. I told her I was just working on the project. She didn't believe me, so she went to the teacher, who recognized that I was indeed working on the project. So nothing came of it. The stupidest reason someone succeeded in getting me in trouble was when we had this sub. He insisted on reading the day's instructions very slowly. It was a work day and that was written on the board, but he took a half hour to describe exactly what the different projects we were working on were. The problem was that we all knew what we were supposed to do, so we got started. He got pissed that we weren't listening to him, so he yelled at us and started over with his speech. Eventually he got so pissed that he ate up another half hour ranting about how he's an industry big shot and all the different reasons why he'd fire us if he could. Anyway, I had him as a substitute a couple other times and he was much better tempered, so I assume that was a fluke. Dude sucker punched me in gym class. I never even got a chance to defend myself or fight back before the teacher stepped in. I got suspended for fighting. I got ISS, in school suspension, basically detention during school hours, for being in a food fight even though I wasn't. They said I was a part of it because I dropped some crumbs from my cupcake onto the floor. Zero tolerance policy, baby. In middle school, the bell to send us home didn't go off on time. We were all standing by the door waiting to leave when all the other classrooms started leaving to go home. The hallways were filled and teachers were telling people goodbye, so my classroom started to leave too. I was one of the first ones out, but apparently our teacher caught the end half of the class and made them sit down and tell them everyone who walked out the door because I dismiss you, not the bell. So all of us who left like the rest of the school got detention. I didn't tie my shoes the way the PE instructor wanted me to. In 11th grade, sat in the dean's office for an hour before they called my mom, whose response I still remember. "You're calling me during my work day to ask my son to tie his shoes in a way that a PE teacher feels suitable? Are you freaking kidding me?" I played AAA hockey at the time along with varsity lacrosse. PE class was the least of my worries, let alone how my shoes were tied. Safe to say I didn't have to retie my shoes. You should have come to the next PE class wearing slippers. Clearing my throat before reading out loud to the class, she yelled at me and threatened detention because she thought I was faking it for attention, but I don't see how. Also, more context, I was a quiet kid, so I wasn't one to create drama to begin with. It just made me not want to talk more than I already didn't want to. WTF. Detention for clearing your throat. Even if you fake it, it is still a dumb reason to get detention. My friend once got in trouble for a small sigh after the teacher said we got more homework or more work to do. Can't really remember. She ended up getting sent out of the classroom for it. Man, I had something similar happen when I was in elementary school. We had math class, so we had to work on a booklet, and me, not liking math, let out a sigh as I opened it up. My teacher took offense to that, so she took my booklet away and sent me out into the hall to think on what I did. I was sent to the principal in 6th grade for arguing with my teacher when she insisted that Hitler was a communist. The principal literally did a face up him, but then pulled himself together and lectured me on being more respectful. First one, I was waving my fingers to try to get a stuck sticky paper off of it. The principal was passing my class and saw me through the door. He thought I was throwing rocks in a class at the back of my friend's head. I got suspended for that. Second one, my math teacher when I was 14 years old had something against me. At the beginning of each class she would ask me to go into the corridor for 15 minutes. That was her idea of a punishment. She didn't even bother to find a reason. I just had to get out. These are both utterly insane. What the heck? Spelling test in 7th grade. We wrote down the words as the teacher shouted them out. One of the words was peace. The kid next to me asks, which one? There's two different words. Peace, peace. The teacher said, the one on the list you were supposed to study. That's bulls. I whispered, peace as in piece of pie. She made us both rip up our tests for cheating. Peace as in piece of crap, teacher. Failed an in-class project cause no one would let me join their group. The teacher told me to get over it and find a group, which led to a group of popular kids tell me that I'm a loser. Fun times in school. Man, every time I had to do a group project the other people in my group asked to work by themselves so they didn't have to work with me. It felt kinda bad, but I work better alone anyway. At my elementary school, they didn't really have any stuff to play with outside, so we would play with sticks, rocks, pine cones, etc. But they didn't like that, so they would send us to sit at the wall for all of recess if we got caught. It was weird. When I was in the 8th grade we had, for one day, a substitute teacher in our Portuguese class. She had the job to make us do a little text about what we thought it would be the best invention ever. I made it about toilets. We delivered the papers 10 minutes after. As she was reading them she would make comments like too much commas or this needs more paragraphs. As soon as she got to mine she stopped speaking, demanded one kid to go and get the principal. The principal comes, reads the text, also get furious, picks me up, drags me into his office. In there, he and the substitute called my mom, made her do 30 kilometers in a traffic-filled city. When she arrived, she read the text and started laughing, like legit crying and grabbing onto her stomach. They got so mad at my mom for laughing instead of taking it seriously that the principal suspended me for 1 week. Call of duty and no homework for 1 week thanks to my mom. In middle school, some kids were stomping on caterpillars during recess. I took a Ziploc bag from my lunch and put as many caterpillars in it as I could to rescue them by taking them somewhere else. I fast walked to get away fairly quickly without making a scene. A teacher stopped me and accused me of running and shoving. I didn't touch anyone at all, and when she saw the bag, she gave me a look of utter disgust. I got lunch detention for it. I ultimately switched out of that school because the staff had it in for me for some mental health issues and quirks that I later discovered was Asperger's syndrome. I was waiting in the bathroom for a urinal. A kid walked towards me and choke-slammed me against the wall. He told the teacher that I was watching him pee and I got 3 days off after school. A couple of friends and me sat next to our favorite teacher at lunch. We chatted, joked around, it was fun. Then we left. After lunch the janitor complained the cafeteria was trashed and asked who was responsible. The teacher who we sat with and talked to during lunch blamed us. We got detention and had to stay after school to clean. We all went to the teacher and said, hey, we sat and joked with you. You know we didn't make a mess. Didn't care, stuck with the punishment. Oh, but it gets worse. I missed the bus home. I lived 12-15 miles out of town. I had hours of chores to do when I got home. Taking care of animals, stacking firewood. Hard freaking chores. Called my mom to pick me up. Got home, they had called my dad. He didn't care the reason I got in butt beating for getting in trouble. Not like a spanking. Whipped with a belt that left welts making it hard to sit. My mom believed me, so the next day she went to the school, talked to the principal and teacher. Neither of them cared. To any teacher that reads this, please, you know the kids that are getting abused, even if you don't have solid proof. Please try to help them out. Don't do this crap that puts them in more physical danger and stress. I got a B- on an assignment once, so the teacher decided I was slipping and had me on lunch detention and I had to show my assignments ahead of time. Kids wondered why I cried over it as I went home to an butt whooping. 6th or 7th grade. A kid came up to me and punched me. I didn't even punch him back or do anything because a teacher saw right away. I was suspended for 2 days for fighting. I dropped my phone down an entire flight of stairs once. I took it out of my pocket. It slipped. I tried to catch it with my hand, but I just ended up hitting it forwards and upwards. It landed at the bottom of the stairs flat on the screen. It was completely broken except for one thing. It could still receive phone calls. So next period my classmates kept calling me on repeat and I could do nothing about it because my phone could not silence or ignore the call. Naturally, my teacher blamed me and I was sent to the principal's office, who told me never to do it again and that she'd be keeping my phone the rest of the day. I seriously don't think she realized it was freaking shattered even when she was holding it. I would ask my friends to keep on making calls to that phone so the principal would have experienced it too, lol. This will get buried, but I do have a story. When I was in 3rd grade we kept all of our folders in this little denim pocket on the backs of our chairs. About halfway through the year mine ripped, so it was pretty difficult to keep everything inside. I was a relatively quiet kid though and I didn't say anything to the teacher. One day we had a substitute. She was a pretty typical old woman who didn't seem to care much about us at all. We had to take a spelling test that day, so she asked us to put our dividers up. As well as being a quiet kid, I was also a kid with undiagnosed ADHD. I already knew the material she was teaching us and I instead got myself absorbed into a book. I didn't notice it was time to take the test until my classmates were putting up their dividers. I shut my book and went to grab mine. At that exact moment, my denim pocket completely broke. There were papers everywhere. My panicked little 7-year-old butt scrambled to grab them all and put them back in, but putting folders in a broken pocket is an arduous task, and the tests were already passed out before I could finish. So what does the sub do seeing this tiny 3rd grader scrambling to shove 30 crinkled note sheets into a little red folder? She screamed at me. I'd never had a teacher go off on me like this sub did. She ridiculed me for holding up the class and making the other students wait. I couldn't help myself. I burst out crying, which only made her yell even louder. I obviously wasn't some perfect angel during elementary school. I was smart, but I also had a lot of behavioral issues at the time. Once again, undiagnosed ADHD. However, I couldn't always control my actions, and my teachers were usually very understanding of that, seeing that I was otherwise a pretty chill kid. But this substitute yelled at me as though I had spilled my papers on purpose. My little brain could understand being disciplined for something caused by my actions, but I couldn't comprehend being screamed at for something completely out of my hands. I had actual nightmares from this woman. I don't even know why, because I can deal with those types of people fine nowadays. She ended up telling the principal about me, but luckily he was a pretty cool dude. I never had that substitute again. Of course you have nightmares from that. You were tiny and powerless. She was big, powerful and crazy. My boy, do I have a list for you. One primary school, grade 6. We had a youth Christian band come play for some Christian holiday period that we were at school for. At the end of the show I had a tickle in my throat and started coughing while still clapping at the end as everyone else in the church did too. Was pulled aside for booing the performance. No one booed the whole event from memory, and couldn't fight it. 2 weeks detention and forced to join the choir club. 2 high school, grade 8. Someone stuck a condom to the outside of my school bag, which was on a bag rack outside the library. No bags in the library. Another student brought my bag in and showed a teacher. Once being identified as my bag, I was given a week detention. 3 high school, grade 8. Did my homework in class, the same class we were given it. Teacher was annoyed I skipped ahead because I already knew it all. Was stuck cleaning the science rooms for that day's lunch break. 4 high school, grade 9. A new student with the exact same name as me joined my school. Proceeded to acquire all of his uniform detention slips for half the year. I fought all of these, but when a substitute would be in charge of detention that day I couldn't get out of it. 5 high school, grade 10. Complimented my history teacher on her dress. Substitute reported it to higher ups. Both me and her were investigated by the school to make sure no fishy business was going on. 6 high school, grade 12. 1 day suspension for refusing to complete my assignment, an assignment I had handed in 3 times all prior to due date. All on a new USB each time as it was for graphic design, and our email. I also never got those 3 USBs back. 7 high school, grade 12. Skipping a class I was there for. As in, the teacher marked me as away, then saw me in class about 5 minutes later, then printed off the detention slip and gave it to me. I was also sitting only 2 seats away from her. 8 high school, grade 12. Had an allergic reaction to makeup we used in special effects. This wasn't a previously known allergy of mine, so I didn't know. Teacher didn't believe me, so I was required to catch up after school the first day I came back. 6, 7 and 8 all the same teacher who I had for 5 years and who I had complained about to the school for 5 years in a row. We should clean our classroom and naturally there was a lot of trash. We only had 1 trash can and it was full, so I compressed it because it was 50% air, and the teacher got mad at me, wrote a letter to my parents and moved me on this stupid smiley board to the red side. I can still remember this until now. These are more ridiculous than I was expecting. I got called down to the office for skipping a class I didn't have, with a teacher I never had. It's kind of a tie. I got suspended on the last day of middle school for having a green mohawk, and then a few years later, I got in school suspension for saying hi to the principal. I'd love to hear how saying hi got you suspended. I defended myself against a bully that was bothering me for years. My family and I reported it multiple times to the school, changing classes because he was in them, only for him to then be changed into my exact same classes because he was disruptive. What a shock. So I had to keep dealing with this butthole for a majority of my high school career. One day he did something, said something to me, can't remember exactly what, but I just snapped. In all of my built up anger I screamed, "You want to frick with me? Do you?" and attacked him. I was seeing red, fully prepared to beat all of my anger and frustration into him that has been building up the last few years as I lunged at him, and he ran away. I sat back down at my desk like nothing happened, but was sent to the principal's office. The assistant principal was really nice and understanding of all of it, saying that they totally understood and were sorry I had to deal with that, but because of school policy I was suspended. I didn't get in trouble by my parents though, stating they were very proud of me standing up for myself finally. Not going to lie though, it was a cool feeling afterwards. People in the classroom were talking about how I would beat his butt and finally shut him up, and for a wimpy loner kid like myself not having any friends, it felt good. Nobody messed with me after that and I felt like a badass in a weird sort of way. It feels good to finally stand up for yourself. I don't condone fighting or violence and that was the last one I was ever in, but stand up for yourself. Parents need to teach their kids this. Sometimes the only way to get the message across to someone is a physical one, and my message was heard. It felt good. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.